Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Influenza has killed millions of people over time. But affluenza has ruined more people and more Christians than just about any other vice of abundance. Hey, everybody, Joe Simons, like diamonds, back again, Salt Strong Unchurched. This is going to be an interesting one. And as you've probably heard over the years, if you've been a long-term listener, I like to talk about things that are tough for me. And this is all about giving, about being generous. And I'll share a couple true stories of things I've struggled with. And this past month at C12, that's a Christian leadership group that I'm a part of, the main topic was about this, about being generous and participating in giving and giving with without strings attached or having to get credit or having to get tax breaks. Something that I honestly struggle with. And this word, which I've never really heard before, affluenza, came up, and that was one of the main titles. And I'll just kind of read you the definition of affluenza. So, extreme materialism and consumerism associated with the pursuit of wealth and success and resulting in a life of chronic dissatisfaction, debt, overwork, stress, and impaired relationships. Let me read it again. Affluenza, extreme materialism and consumerism associated with the pursuit of wealth and success and resulting in a life of chronic dissatisfaction, debt, overwork, stress, and impaired relationships. When I first read that, I was like, well, that's not me. Of course, most of us say that, right? Just like if, someone says, are you angry? Well, not compared to so-and-so, or do you drink a lot? Not compared to so-and-so. But then I started reading a little bit more, about kind of the dangers of just wealth in general, and the dangers of being focused on money and success in general, which I've also talked about on this podcast. And things like anxiety or worry is there. These are normal things, right? A divided heart, and that means like divided heart in terms of giving, a lack of compassion and mercy on certain people, apathy towards the needs of others. A false sense of security, dissatisfaction and discontentment. And I've felt some of these, over the years of, I don't have money, because I've had times where we had hardly anything. And I've had times where we had a decent amount in our bank account and our savings and 401ks and all that. So I've experienced, both like many of us. And I have felt some of these feelings on both sides of the table. So I kind of struggle with it. And we kind of went around the table, and everyone had to tell kind of a true story of where we struggled with this about giving, and especially in times of abundance. And my wife had one recently where she wanted to give a pretty decent amount of money. We're talking thousands of dollars, not just like 100 or 50. Thousands of dollars for anyone is still a lot of money. I mean, maybe unless you're a billionaire, which we're not. And my first reaction wasn't to get credit. So that's not where I struggle. And it wasn't even the money. We had it to give, and we had earmarked a certain amount that we wanted to give for the year, and it fell within that. So that all that was fine. The problem was this particular thing was something that was going to go completely direct to the person that was impacted, and AKA no tax break for me. And my first initial gut reaction was, oh no, we can't do that. We can't write it off for taxes. It's thousands of dollars. It's a big deal. And my wife was fighting much. She's like, who cares? It's the right thing to do. And it was like the voice of God. And I immediately felt this like sense of guilt. And I was like, you know what? You're right. Like, why, if we all agree, and this is a big part of the podcast here today, if we all agree that everything that we have is really not ours, right? I mean, if we die tomorrow, it's not ours. It could be taken away from us at any given second. That means all this stuff, it's his, it's God's, and he trusts us with it. Why am I trying to get a tax break? And I don't know the answer. I think a lot of us don't like paying taxes, and we'd like to pay as few as many, and we I appreciate tax breaks when they're there. And so that was my immediate reaction, and just something I had to struggle with. We did do the right thing. And what was interesting, I've shared this before on a giving podcast episode, that we were blessed with something awesome shortly after that we did not expect. So it is wild how sometimes we just give without any tax break or without any. In this case, I mean, no one else knew about it. This was anonymous. We got no credit. We got no tax break. We just gave a decent amount of money and impacted the people in particular wildly, which is awesome. We got to kind of see that from afar. And any rate, it felt really, really awesome to do that right thing. But at the time, I struggled with it. And here's what's really wild. So as I was doing this research for this podcast, I just Googled, how many times does the Bible mention helping the poor? How many Bible verses are about helping the poor? And in multiple places, I found that there's over 2,000. That's nuts. I mean, if you recall, we talked about fear on a podcast before, and the word fear and fear not is mentioned many, many hundreds of times in the Bible. But to have something in the Bible listed or mentioned or talked about over 2,000 times, let's just cut it in half, and you say it's just 1,000 times. That's wild. That means it's probably pretty important. And I'm going to read one of the quotes that I love. It's, whoever is kind to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will reward them for what they have done. And old Dave Ramsey, God commands us to be stewards over everything he blesses us with. Everything. That means our time, talents, treasure, relationships, jobs, and yes, our stuff. It's all God's, and he trusts us with it. And I'm reading here now from the C12 thing. When we have abundant resources, we can be tempted to believe our hard work and determination single-handedly causes that increase. But in actuality, even the ability to think, create, achieve, and work hard is a result of God's grace in our lives. Without this grace, we lack the ability to build wealth. But as our resources increase, so do our responsibilities as stewards. And then that next quote is the one I kind of kicked it off with. Influenza has killed millions of people over time, but affluenza has ruined more people and more Christians than about any other vice of abundance. And, what's interesting, I haven't found all 2,000 Bible verses about helping the poor. I have read the Bible quite a few times over the years using my once a day Bible, where essentially you read for about 12 or 15 minutes every single day in the morning. And after a year, you've literally completed the entire Bible. It is a theme that it's tough to ignore. It's mentioned so many times. And what is never mentioned is only help these people, or only help people of, that believe the same thing as you, or that even are from the same country as you. I mean, it does talk about immigrants, and it does talk about kids, and it does talk about even people who've made bad mistakes. And I think that's also an area where I personally struggle. You see some of the homeless people in particular that have made some obviously bad choices, maybe even continue to, right? Maybe you give someone $10, $20, and then immediately or maybe it's an hour later, you're passing by, and now you see him with a bunch of beer, or liquor, or whatever it is they're drinking. And I can understand why that would bother some, because it kind of bothers me. But at the same point, I think once we give it, it's not on us, it's on them. And maybe, I mean, one of the guys I know said, hey, maybe that's the only thing that even lets them sleep. Maybe they've got so much pain and have so many things and ailments going on with their body that it's the alcohol is the only thing that gives them any sense of feeling good at all. As sad as that may be. I mean, a lot of these people, they can't go up to Walgreens or Publix, or wherever you get your medications from, and get a lot of this stuff. Some of them are off the grid and don't want help. And Lily, it's whatever they can get off of the street. So sad as that is, I do know, regardless of all that God loves a cheerful giver. and it's impossible to outgive God, as I found, and I've seen so many amazing stories through C12 where people have just given and given and given, and just God keeps blessing their lives and their kids' lives. It's a really, really, really amazing. Um, what I found here in town, and this is kind of my challenge to you, if you're having trouble or don't know where to give, look right around your own city. There's a thing here in Winter Haven where I am, and Winter Haven's kind of a small town, right? And if you just kind of came here on vacation and stayed a week, even walking through downtown, you may or may not, depending on the time of day, even see a single homeless person. You might think, man, there's not any homeless people here. This here is great. Obviously, if you go at certain times of the day, or the evening, you will see some. But in general, like I think I was naive to it because I wasn't out around the downtown much when we first moved here, and I was like, oh man, I think there's many homeless here at all. It's a small problem, and it turns out it's a huge problem, and it's a huge problem, nationwide, worldwide, obviously. And just in the United States alone, 37 million people are living in poverty. Many of those, homeless, and 11 million of those are children. So 11 million children just in America. These are current stats. Are poverty and or homeless. I mean, it's crazy. And so here in town, I found out there's a group called Heart for Winter Haven that my wife and I got really involved with. And there's 500 approximately. I think it's 511 is the actual number. They've identified everyone down to the last strand of hair. So 511 homeless kids in Winter Haven. That's one city. Okay. That means your town, regardless of how big or small it is, you have homeless kids. Maybe you never see them. They're the ones who maybe are living in a hotel one night, because that's homeless still means it means you don't have a home, right? It means you're going place to place. The next night you might be underneath a railroad track. You might be in the car sleeping in a Walmart parking lot. There's quite a bit of that happens here, and I had no idea until I saw some of the pictures that Heart for Winter Haven had taken. And the Walmart here in town, how many homeless families, it's almost like a little camp that they're coming together, and many of them just sleeping on their cars. And can you imagine, as kids, one, obviously they didn't sign up for that. And two, they didn't do anything to deserve that per se, meaning it was some of their parents' decisions that may or may have gotten them there. But two, it almost sets them up for failure, right? I mean, I live in a house with a roof, and all my kids have their own rooms. You have to share a bathroom from one case, but they all have their own rooms. And I'm being a little sarcastic here, but meaning they're so blessed. And even they have trouble studying sometimes, right? And the distractions of life. They have trouble sometimes staying on track. I can't even imagine a young kid, a 10-year-old boy or girl, not even knowing where they're going to be staying that night, the anxiety and the stress, and maybe you're in a car with 5 other kids cramped in there. How can you even study? How can you even try to do well in school with all the other stuff going on in the home life or lack of home life? I mean, it's so sad. It absolutely breaks my heart. And that's why my wife and I got involved in the Heart for Winter Haven. And every city has these problems. Some have groups like we do in town that are only there just to try to fight this. And the good news is Winter Haven is one of the cities that is reversing it. So it's getting better. Most cities are actually getting worse. There is, especially now with all this inflation and people just feeling poor and losing jobs. It really is sad how big of a problem this is. And there's some people that love to go global and go hit other countries and other areas. There's nothing wrong or right with any of it. The Bible doesn't say there's anything wrong or right with any of it. I personally like to do stuff in my own backyard where I can see the impact I'm making here in my city. Now, if there wasn't any problem here, yeah, I'd be going all over the place. But, I think a lot of that just comes down to what your heart's telling you, what God's telling you to do. I personally like to do stuff in my hometown first, and then kind of spread out from there. But I would encourage you, regardless. And you might be saying, well, hey, I don't have much money. Maybe you're someone who is struggling right now just to pay the bills. Couple things. One, it is on us at some point, right? We can't just keep blaming the economy or inflation or whatever to say, you know what, I have to cut back on the spending. I can't spend more than I'm making. And if you're making very little, then you have to live on very little. And my wife and I struggle with this. We had this certain lifestyle, and when I moved over from the old company that I was in to quitting my job and was making six figures to making nothing with Salt Strong and having to invest a lot of our savings into Salt Strong. And then my wife went through transition as well, where she wasn't really working. So we had really no income coming in, and yet we were still trying to live the way we were. And like I said, most of our savings went to Salt Strong. And I mean, we were getting to the point where we were going to run out of money if we didn't make a change. And that's when my wife and I had to say, you know what? Yeah, we are used to living this way. And at some point you almost kind of feel entitled to it, where I've always done it and things will change, and things weren't changing. Salt Strong wasn't making any money. My wife didn't get the job that she wanted at the time. And we had to make some massive changes and come up with a budget and slash stuff big time, things that were nice and convenient. The way we shopped, right? I mean, we had to literally change everything to get us back down to where we weren't just bleeding and hemorrhaging money. And I see too many people that don't make the change, that just kind of keep going and just racking up debt, and that is incredibly stressful as well. So one, I would challenge you to just live within your means, and God does call us to do that many times. And in the quotes about the poor and all that, I mean, how many times does Jesus himself talk about giving up your stuff and following him? And depending on how you decipher that, it could just mean, hey, literally give everything you have enough and follow him, or hey, meaning don't put that as what's most important, right? Don't put that as, oh, well, this is the most important thing in my life, is all my stuff and all the things I have and all the money and the cash and the toys, putting Jesus first. But either way, make sure you live within your means. And then two, set aside a certain amount, even if it's small, even if it's $10 a month or $10 a year. If you're at zero, anything is better than nothing. And you will be shocked, even if you're starting at $10 or even $1 a month, something super small, just the act of giving, it feels amazing. It really does. Even though I wanted that tax break, it really felt amazing and special, and it's kind of addicting, the same way saving money is. It really does feel good to give. And so I would just encourage you to do it, and you will be shocked. As I said, you can't outgive God. And that would be my challenge to you, is just try to give a little bit more, and watch what happens in your life. And it's not always going to be, oh, money, or I found money, or some rich uncle just gave me a bunch of money, or what, all the silly things that you hear about. Many times it is. Many times I've had instances where I got a bonus or some awesome thing happened in my life financially that I wasn't even expecting shortly after I'd given something that was maybe a little bit out of the norm for me. But once again, that's not the reason you're doing it. You're doing it for that awesome feeling, for more abundance in your life, not just with money, but just with everything. When we've been at our best at giving, my wife and I in particular, it just seems like everything is going right in our family. And I mean, how that's priceless, right? Meaning no one's hurt, no one's sick, no one's going through any massive issues. And it feels like the more that we do bless others, the more our family is blessed as a unit. So I would just encourage you to do it. Don't get sick from affluenza. I really do love that quote, and it makes so much sense. Another thing we talked about in C12, I'll end it with this, is kind of a family stewardship plan. Once again, this is for everyone, regardless if your budget's $10 a month or $1,000 a month or $10,000 a month. If that happens to be you, come up with a plan, right? It's one thing just to say, oh yeah, I'm going to give this year. So it's another one to actually have a plan in place and get the whole family involved and say, all right, we're going to give to these groups, or we're going to save this amount for, like, the thing that my wife wanted to do, which was just, giving to someone who was truly in need, even though there's no tax write-off. Coming up with the plan and sticking to it is pretty awesome. So hope this was helpful. I hope this hit the right people it meant to. I know I needed to hear it. It was awesome timing that that this was the message in C12 this past month, and I was glad to at least be able to share that story. And I don't think I was alone in that. Where when we give, we kind of not necessarily. Some people want the recognition, but normally it's like, hey, I want to get some credit for that, regardless if it's a tax break or someone sending a thank you note or whatever. But that can't be the reason that we do it. We have to do it out of our heart, be generous and not loving. And once again, can't outgive God. Love you guys. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Hit me up if you have any thoughts or questions on it. Joe@saltstrong.com.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul. It was passed down to me from the days of old. You'll find us on the water if there was a way. It's been said my papa, he wrote the book on catching big reds and 20-pound snook. I wish I knew all the things he knew today. For he's the reason why we are this way. And he put fishing in our soul.